Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin Graham. Welcome back to the studio, Kevin. How are you?
I'm absolutely superb.
You're superb.
On this Monday afternoon.
What a difference a couple of decent performances and results make, Kevin. We're going to be talking about the impact of Tommy Rogic, the Wizard of Oz. A guy who, you know, we kind of mentioned early doors in the season. Get him in, get Griffiths in. And the response we were getting around about that time is, get over them, guys. They're finished. They're done. And look at where we are now. No that Neil Lennon or Celtic make any point of watching this show or taking our opinions into consideration. But Tom Rogic now, you're looking at him, you think, well, you can't drop him. That's 4 assists. Is it 4 assists in 2 games, Tommy Rogic? Incredible.
I know, I was one of the guys who was sitting here during the summer, sitting in that chair there. I've moved chairs.
You've been promoted?
I've been promoted, yes. Saying that I would take the 4 million for him. You look at his stats, and you do look at his stats, the number of games that he's played in the last 2 seasons are extremely low. And when you were looking at the number of bodies that we had in the middle of the park, you were going, well, we could probably lose Tam for the number of games that he gives us. Unfortunately, the performances haven't been too great. The creativity hasn't been too great. And the big fella, the 2 games against Aberdeen, he does what he does. He plays for the moment. He plays in moments. You'll maybe not see him for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of a game, but then he'll do something that makes you remember him. And that's the type of player that he is. He's no like your Ryan Christie. You know, Christie's all energy and he's a bundle, and it's just like a blur with Christie. Big Tam just seems to pick his moments, and when he decides to do something, he does it well. He really does, and he's got a fantastic vision, fantastic touch. And I'm sitting here hoping that I'm sitting here feeling foolish that I says in the summer we should have took the £4 million for him. You didn't want to lose a player like that. We say it quite often on this show that some players are born to play for Celtic, and he is a Celtic player.
Yeah, we've mentioned quite a lot who we would have liked to have seen in the hoops. Now, Tommy Rogic, I think, going back to a point you made there, and building on that point, Kevin, I think he's the type of player who can do things that no one else on the pitch can do. I mean, Ryan Christie's energy is unbelievable. His work rate's incredible. His creativity, he is one of the most creative players in the team. He plays risky passes. He tries risky shots. Sometimes it ends up in Rose Ed. Other times, like yesterday, you see a goal that it's just a shame we weren't actually there to see it in person, because that is one of the greatest goals that Celtic have ever scored at Hampden. It is.
It's the change of camera angle at Hampden as well. When they put the cameras in the North Stand, showed us that goal far better than what we would usually have seen it on the TV. Celtic's play, our whole system is based upon the front 4 being utterly fantastic on the day. If our front 4 click on the day, then we're great. And you look at, you've got Tam, yesterday you had Christie, Rogic and Moy. All of them like playing early balls. All of them will play risky balls. They play with a speed that Scottish teams can't really handle. And then you fire Edouard back into that mix. Him linking up with 3 intelligent players behind him will put the frighteners. I think even Derek McInnes admitted that seeing Edouard back there put the frighteners up them because of what he can do. There was a moment in the second half when Edouard pulled the ball out of the sky in the box, and he took out about 3 players when he trapped the ball. That's the talent. You look at El Houssi as well.
I thought you were going to call him Moy.
Moy, we'll call him Moy for now on, right? We're going to call him Moy. Look at Moy yesterday. His first time passes all came off with Edouard there. His best game that he had previous to that was when he worked well with Ayeti. It's because I think sometimes it looks like he's having a poor game because Moy tries things. Ellen Houssi tries things as well. Roddick, Big Tam, he tries things as well. Christie tries things. And if those 4 break down, then we look untidy. and we lose the ball, we look shapeless at times as well. But our system relies on individuality, and it relies on those 4 players up the top having the games of their life, or great games. And yesterday, the first half especially, they were fantastic. But when you look at the first half, let's look at the second half as well. We managed that game. We managed that game out yesterday. Something we never done at Pataudry, something we never done in Lille. We managed the game, and I was more pleased that we managed that game out. We started having niggly fouls when our legs went because of our European exertions. We just grinded the game into the dirt, and we were extremely comfortable with Duffy, and we've been Duffy's biggest critic as well. He would. Do you remember the Chris Tarrant TV show on a Sunday night when he would show you things from Japanese telly? Do you remember it? It used to be 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. And they would show you guys getting paving slabs getting dropped on their heads as part of a Japanese game show.
Just wondering where this is going, mate.
Well, that's what Shane Duffy is. He would header a paving slab if it was thrown into the box. That's it. That game yesterday suited him. And another beat on as well. Apart from that one mistake where he knew when he was short on the pass back, the pass back. Beat on was fantastic yesterday as well. So was Duffy. We need to give them credit. You had a look at Duffy yesterday, and you could actually hear him shouting on the pitch. You could see him talk. Him and Bain were having an argument for about 5 minutes about something. And you can see them, you can see he's talking, you can see his worth. Yes, he has got limitations, but yesterday was a game that he loved. It was a game that suited him, and I've got to give the management team credit for the way that we managed that game out, because our legs had went after about 65 minutes. I mean, Aberdeen have had a week to prepare for that. You noticed in the first 15 minutes of the second half, for me, we tried to kill the game. We tried to get that third goal because we knew we were going to drop in performance the longer the game went on.
Now, you made a few points. Eagle-eyed viewers will have seen that I was giving you a close-up on my choice of beverage for today. It's just that when you criticise somebody in the world of Celtic, people look for excuses to criticise you back. And I was even accused, Kevin, of drinking alcohol on this show, which is ridiculous. I barely touch alcohol, and that just is fizzy water. That's all it is, fizzy water. So I just thought I'd show the viewers that. But what I would say, Kevin, going on some of your points that you've raised there, I actually said that when we looked at the lineup against Aberdeen yesterday. You've got that bank of Christy El-Yunusi, and in front, obviously, Edouard as well, and Tommy Rogic. And then if you think that's bad enough in terms of creative flair, you've then got Luxo and Frimpong coming down the wings at you as well. That is a frightening prospect for any team. Now, I think it would be remiss of us just to dive right into the performance yesterday, because it was, that performance, particularly in the first half, in the first 60 minutes against Lille, is a huge improvement on what we had seen up to and including the Aberdeen 3-3 game. So in terms of a reaction, I don't think it was as is. I don't think Celtic have approached it as is. I don't think Neil Lennon has either. I think there's been a reaction, and what we've now seen as a team who, for me, I think they're brimming in confidence. I think that sometimes comes with Neil Lennon and Neil Lennon's teams by being criticised. I think there's a siege mentality kicks in, and they've come back out fighting. We've seen and heard it in Neil Lennon's interviews, haven't we? And I think we've seen it in the performances.
We were in here last Monday, and we got quite a lot of criticism for what we says on the Sunday and the Monday, and I fully stand by what we says at that point. Well, what I says, I know you'll probably stand by what you says as well, but I fully stand by what I says. But I can have 2 points of view. Two of them can marry up. My feeling that's the beginning and the end is not going to change, but that doesn't mean to say I don't want Neil Lennon to do well. Neil Lennon does well, Celtic do well.
Yep.
And there was nobody more... I was extremely pleased when Lennon came out on the Tuesday in that press conference. It looked like he had a bonfire in his eyes. It looked like somebody had set him alight again. And I'm not taking any credit for that. But when you saw the way that he spoke at that press conference, you were really, really hoping it was going to channel through to the team. And he had got... I mean, we all say, if it known the way that Neil Lennon works, hypothetically, we all say Neil Lennon works better when he's got that siege mentality. When he's the underdog. When he thinks he's been wronged or his team's been slighted, that's when he works better. And even the whole of this week, his interviews have been great. I was listening to him yesterday before the game, and even the language he was using, even the spirit in his voice was far better than a week ago.
Yep.
It was far better than a week ago. And I'll argue with anybody who says that wasn't the case. You saw him on that bench at Pittodrie, looking like the world had ended.
Defeated. He looked defeated, Kev.
And last week at Pittodrie, what I actually says was, I actually felt the same. I didn't say the result was the same. I says I felt the same as I did that night when I left Love Street into the 4-0, because I couldn't see how we were going to turn this round.
But the reason you're having to clarify that is because people jump on your words and they create their own reference to what you've said, Kevin, and we've seen that, which I think's a bit kind of perverse. I mean, for somebody to come out yesterday and ask if I'm all right, first thing in your mind when we've just qualified for a Scottish Cup final, right, which could lead to a quadruple treble, and the first thing in your mind is I better go on social media to try and wind up me. I think that's pathetic. That is pathetic. First thing I would do is I would be talking about the positive performances that Celtic have had against a fantastic side on Thursday night, which I think that performance and that result, Kevin, will get better with age. I think we'll look back on that and think, wow, did we actually draw 2-2 with Lille? Did we actually go 2-0 up against that side?
See, for me, I was extremely disappointed at the final whistle that we had threw away another game for a winning position. Mm-hmm. Even though when you look back on the Aberdeen game the previous week, there was positives in that second half. We got ourselves in front. When you look at that Lille game, 2-0 up, what a fantastic first half performance. Then we threw it away in the second half. And any positives that I took out of those games were tempered by the fact was we had 6 points at one point during both of these games and we've only ended up with 2. So any positives were weighed down by the fact is we didn't win any of the games. And sometimes winning can increase that mentality.
Yeah, you've lost 2 leads, Kevin. You've lost 2
you're
leads. Looking at that in a balanced way.
Uh-huh.
That's just factual, you know.
And so from all our superb attacking play yesterday, that's why I was more pleased with the clean sheet and the fact is we saw the game
out. Managed it, absolutely.
We game managed it out, because there will be games that we need to do that, and we need to give the team praise when they do that. We rely on individuals being motivated, individuals playing well, and it's the manager. It's there to do that. He didn't look like he could do it last week. This week he looks like he can do it. I'm
going to pick up on your point. We rely on individuals, we do, but we also rely on individuals to be playing, and that's been a big issue this season through injury and also through illness. Now, the injury side of thing, you've got Julian and Forrest, 2 guys who would be on the team sheet most weeks, I would guess, Kevin. First picks for Neil Lennon. Big players for Celtic, in big games. Massive losses to Celtic. But also, when we look at the COVID situation, and obviously there's been breaking news in the last hour that Rangers have suspended George Edmondson and Jordan Jones after they've breached COVID regulations by attending a private party. Both must now isolate for 14 days. So there's been things that Celtic have had to deal with that our challengers haven't had to deal with, and obviously that will come home to roost eventually, as will the injuries. And I think that Celtic are better equipped to deal with a number of injuries than any other side due to the depth of our squad. That takes us back to the original point of Tommy Rogic, because earlier on in the campaign, we had said, well, there's 2 jerseys there, Lee Griffiths and Tom Rogic. The forgotten men, I think we called them. These are 2 guys that can contribute. And there was a lot of Celtic fans who were of the view, Kevin, that had Tommy Rogic gone to Qatar for £4 million, they were thinking, oh, well, that's going to maybe finance a deal for Shane Duffy or whoever it may have been that was coming in. we're now looking at Tom Rogic as being pivotal. And I think when you look at last season and the turnaround after the Rangers defeat at Celtic Park, Kevin, a big part of that, I think, was, Edouard needed backup. He needed somebody to come in and help him out. And what happened is we got a revitalised Lee Griffiths coming back, didn't we? And we changed the style. We played with two up front. There was a partnership development. And that gave us the spark that we needed last season. Now, it's a lot earlier in the season now, albeit we're into November now, Kevin. But I think Tommy Rogic, something like that, can give us the spark required at the same time as everything else that's happening, the so-called mutiny in the camp that Lennon says doesn't exist. And who are we to argue with that? If Neil Lennon comes out and says that is not the case, you've got to believe him, Kevin.
Of course
you've got to believe him. And there is a message coming out of Celtic, really, through the players and through management, that we're all in this together and we're all backing each other up. I think Scott Brown said, we've got his back, he's got our back.
The thing
that's refreshing to hear that.
The thing is, though, Paul, you're saying that we've got to back the manager, but then the manager's also came out and says there's players wanting to leave.
I know. That's what created it.
Everything that we listed last week is fact.
Yeah.
So for him to come out and say there's no mutiny in the camp, well,
we're only going by his comments after the Ferencváros game.
Hopefully that means Neil Lennon sorted it.
You've resolved it.
There's been a meeting. You've done whatever you have to do. I mean, I says after the St Johnstone game that the mentality of this Celtic team is unbelievable. And again, I think we've seen that over the last the last two games anyway, against Lille and Aberdeen. And that's all we can talk about. But if you would have asked me last Monday, and you did ask me last Monday, if you could have seen those two results coming, I did say no.
I was concerned, Kevin.
Because of it was just the whole vibe, the whole feeling.
The passive nature of the performances.
And that changed when Neil Lennon turned up to that press conference on the Tuesday. That's when I started looking at it differently.
Do you think it's changed for the long term, Kevin?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I want it to change for the long term. Of course I want it to change for the long term. I do not want Celtic Football Club and Neil Lennon not to be successful just to prove my bizarre feeling right. Know what I mean? If you want that, then there's something up with you.
No, I know that, but to be accused of that is rather bemusing. It is bemusing. Really. Because, people go on about clickbait, and you've got to understand, Kevin, that if 10 people watch us or if 10,000 people watch us, it makes absolutely no difference because we don't work to that regime. We don't work to the clickbait regime. We're here. And the reason we have a different guest on the show every single day is to get a broad view of the Celtic support. So if you've got you every Monday, Lawrence on a Tuesday and so forth, and then various guests for match day, you're going to get a wide variety of views. It's not all about my view or your view. And you and I disagree on many things on the show, which is fine. That's healthy. And obviously Lawrence and I like a wee disagreement now and again as well. But that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, we've got to look at it. We want Neil Lennon to be successful. And whatever happened between the Sunday and the Tuesday when he came out in that press conference must have lit that fire once again. And I started thinking about it after that press conference, and I'm going, has he been told? Obviously, we maybe expected something to happen on the Monday because I'd just say the whole week that we had beat off AC Milan, beat off Rangers, thrown away a lead at Aberdeen. Nothing happened. So I begun to think that, well, Neil Lennon has a full backing of the board. He must have. They must trust him to see this through. And when you saw that press conference on the Tuesday, you saw a man rejuvenated. There was something born again within him on that Tuesday. Then you saw him on the Thursday again, and he was taking it back at the press. Yesterday, he took it back at the press as well. Took it back at everybody. The way that he was talking, there's an energy, there's a passion back in him. If he's got that energy and passion back himself, and it's maybe he was just worn down by the circumstances. You've mentioned Julian, the whole COVID thing, the whole break,
ball and goalie,
the whole thing. If he's got that passion and energy back, that should rub off on the players.
I think it will.
Because that's what Neil Lennon does.
No, I think it will rub off on the players. And I was speaking to a coach during the week who has this theory around how a team plays as the manager portrays himself. And, you know, there was a lacklustre kind of nature to some of the performances, Kevin, leading up to the results not going well, because people know that throughout a season you grind out results without playing well. It's often said that that's how a champions team win a league, because, you know, they know how to win ugly and all of these things. You take that into consideration. But, you know, if the criticism, some would say over the top criticism, has got to a point where it has sparked and rejuvenated Neil Lennon, then fantastic. I'm delighted, because all I want is for Celtic to win and keep winning. And I'm going to ask you a question all about that. Now that I was almost reluctant to talk about the potential final, Kevin. We knew that Hearts were in it before the game against Aberdeen, but I was reluctant to talk about that. Was that due to the fact that we'd spent all week being called entitled and spoilt and panty wetters and all these other terms that people are diving onto just because Celtic have set standards that you want them to maintain, Kevin? These are standards that have been set by the club and the team that we're watching at the moment, and you just want to maintain them. If you are happy that the standards are not maintained, then as far as I'm concerned, there's something wrong with you. You want to maintain that level at all times. Now, we're all realistic enough to know that you can't possibly win a treble year in, year out. However, we're almost 4 seasons of complete domestic dominance behind us. And obviously we're 1 game away from that historic, monumental accolade. When you look ahead to that, that's when you start thinking to yourself, you know what? Surely it's impossible to do a treble. Surely it's impossible to do an invincible treble or a quadruple treble. And then you look at this season and you look at the strength of our squad, and if it is reinvigorated and we go on a winning run, which I think we will, surely it's impossible to win 5 in a row. Quintuple, is it? And then I started thinking, well, realistically, what can we expect from this season? What would I be satisfied with? And that's a big question, because I've spoken to a lot of Celtic fans, Jim Orr on Friday, disinterested in many ways in the European campaign this season. And he explained why. Not because he's entitled or spoilt or any of these things, Kevin, just because he is focusing on other matters with Celtic. And I've had a lot of people saying that about Europe. And I think my big thing about Europe this season, Kevin, is if you want to get a winning run and you want to get that momentum, the European games come into that. Mm-hmm. And I think we've probably seen it last week. After the Aberdeen game, you wanted a performance, you wanted some momentum, the feel-good factor. And I think we started getting that against Lille, carried on yesterday against Aberdeen. And I think that was my point in respect to the European games. You don't want to take the foot off the gas for Europe. You know, you want to keep that going. So that's one view. You can park the Europa League this season. You can park this tournament. 10 in a row is everything is another view. But there's another view which is the quadruple treble is everything. And I was thinking about this all morning, and I'm thinking, well, realistically, what I would like for this season, I'm not going to say win it all. I've said that before. I'd love Celtic to win everything. But realistically, if we can wrap up the quadruple treble before the turn of the year, Kevin, and what a year it's been, you know, and win 10 in a row, I would be satisfied with that. And I never want Celtic to lose any games. I know that they do, and they will in the future. But that's the 2 things I think this season. If we come through this season with everything that's happened, and we manage to get 10 in a row, and we manage to get the quadruple treble, I'll be satisfied with that.
I think that's utopia. I think that would be a utopian end to this season, and possibly the whole generation of dominance. For me, I was thinking about this yesterday, and if it ends with our 4th treble in a row, I think I'll be more than happy. I think we've seen dominance, domestic dominance that we've never seen before. Unlikely to see again. Domestic dominance when faced with what could you say, a rival which is heavily backed in the Scottish press.
And in many other ways.
And in many other ways as well. And to do 4 trebles in a row, for me, is fantastic. We've done a podcast with Aaron Boyle for the Keno Foundation.
Probably about a year ago.
Probably about a year ago it would be, aye. And I actually says at that point, I was more impressed with the fact that we're now 35 games, on cup games, unbeaten.
Kevin, that's like not only unbeaten, 35 wins. So that none of them went to a replay, did they?
No.
So that's like going through a whole league campaign almost and winning every game. So not just an invincible league campaign, but winning every game. That's the equivalent of that. It's quite incredible.
Somebody might correct me on this. The last team that beat us in 90 minutes in a cup tie was Ross County in the semi-final of the League Cup in January 2016.
And Vanessa Cali beat us after that.
Did they?
Didn't they? Under Ronnie.
Am I getting my seasons mixed up there? Did we not get to 2 semi-finals in Ronnie's last season? Beat on penalties, and Effie Ambrose got sent off against Ross County.
In the rain.
In the rain, or was that the season before?
Someone online will be able to check, because this is all from memory. This is an old-fashioned way that we deal with that.
But
no checking Google.
But for me, if we got 4 trebles in a row,
I know,
and it ends, I'll be like,
but Kevin, if it ends,
magnificent.
and it will be. But if it ends,
these players have created history.
Yeah.
If it ends, people are going to go, I'm disappointed. Then 6 months down the line, they'll go, by the way, I really enjoyed the last 4 years.
Would it take that shine off though? Kevin, just the way it's happened with the quadruple not being wrapped up last season, not being wrapped up at all, but you know what I mean? It's been carried on to this season. I think the shine would be taken off of that because there is such an importance, not only with the prestige and the historical relevance of 10 in a row, but during these difficult times, I think there's a huge financial implication to not winning that. Not only to Celtic, but against Celtic, because the onus goes on to your greatest rivals. And I think that that's an important thing. So the shine of the quadruple treble is incredible and monumental, a success as that would be, should we wrap it up. And I think we will wrap that up. I think the shine would be taken off that if we didn't go forward and win 10 in a row.
I see it as 2 different things. I do see it as 2 different. I see us as on the 20th of December trying to make history. Trying to make history which will stand alone in its own right forevermore.
Now, just to confirm, that game will be shown on a terrestrial channel. It won't be on Premier, because that yesterday was dreadful.
It's on the BBC and Premier.
Kept buffering. I think a lot of people had the same issues. First half, kept buffering. But Kevin,
I watched it on Australian tele.
Oh, did you? That was the real deal, and it didn't work properly. But going back to yesterday's performance, let's have a wee chat. Let's have a look through the team. How much of El Yunusi's change and improvement in form is down to Luxo? I'm not taking any credit away from him. I just think they're a good partnership down that left.
Diego Luxo, man.
He's frightening.
He just owns that left-hand side. He is the left-hand side.
I'm not being disparaging. He's kind of long-legged, and the legs just come out of nowhere. It's as if...
Telescopic.
Yeah.
He's frightening. He's got everything that you want in a fullback. He's a modern-day fullback.
He's solid, Kevin.
We worry about Frimpong on the other side that he can't really defend. No, let's give Frimpong his due. In Lille, he defended extremely
100%,
well.
He did.
But Luxo can go forward. He can defend. He's a hardy soul. He puts the bit in.
He's skillful.
He can
dribble.
He can get himself out of tight situations with the ball. Can hardly speak a word of English, and as Neil Lennon says, I didn't really need to give him too many instructions because he can just play. He is a phenomenal football player.
It's a different level, Kevin, isn't it?
And how no club in Italy didn't take a chance on him after what you'd done with Genoa and sitting on the bench at AC Milan. I think we're extremely lucky to have him, and I'm going to enjoy every single minute he plays in a Celtic jersey this season.
2 things about Luxo. I'd never heard of him until Stevie Ray came on the ACSOM bulletin, and he was bigging him up several months, I think, probably, before Celtic signed him. And then a friend of mine, Marco Ciccarella, who's a big Celtic fan, obviously Italian as well, and he sent me a message going on about how incredible a signing. He was surprised Celtic got him. Going back to what you said there should have been other clubs in Italy looking at this guy. A brilliant fit at this time. Now, Greg Taylor is you know, I'm not going to say he's been thrown in the scrap heap. Greg Taylor, for me, is a left back, Kevin, who was being asked to play in a role that he was unfamiliar with. Mm-hmm. He didn't get much criticism from me because every time you seen him in the final third, you took into account the fact that he is far more used to be spending most of his game time on the back foot, defending. And then for 70 or 80% of his game, he's up front almost on the left wing position. But he is obviously the second choice at the moment. And, you know, Luxo is probably the first name on the team sheet. But I do think that El Yunusi, another player who I've championed throughout his tenure at Celtic, I think he's benefiting from having that quality behind him. And I think we've probably now will see El Yunusi occupying that area of the field far more often, because there was the discussion about what's his best position. And I know, you know, he's just been called up again for the international games. So he plays in the centre, I believe, when he's playing international football. But I think we've found his best position as a result of the performances of Luxo. Now, you've mentioned Frimpong. And again, I think the performance we've seen on Thursday night was far more disciplined than what we had encountered against Aberdeen on the Sunday. So there were so many times where Frimpong's done the overlap, which I think is his natural instinctive game, take on players, go for a mazy. And then some of them, I think Lawrence made a good point actually on Sunday, sometimes he's maybe a step ahead of players, so when he's looking up, there actually isn't the ball on, and it's all about just putting it into space. And then it's the striker's job to get into that space. But what we've seen against Lille was a far more disciplined performance from Frimpong. Now, this then takes me on to Duffy and the criticism. To be honest, I don't think I have. I've been criticised for not criticising them enough, bizarrely enough. I think Duffy brings a lot to that defence in terms of the leadership and the organisational ability. I think I've seen a lot of that with Ayer. You put in a player like Beaton, where Duffy doesn't really need to manage or lead him because of the experience of the boy. And we've probably seen one of Duffy's most accomplished performances yesterday.
Definitely. I mean, what I like about Duffy is how many times did the ball break in the box yesterday? It wasn't too often, but any time Aberdeen managed to get a ball away in the box, there was a Celtic player blocking it. It was a Celtic player throwing their body in front of it, whether it was Beaton or Duffy. And you see, yesterday was Duffy's type of game. Let Aberdeen, how the Aberdeen attack, they get the ball out wide and the fire and cross balls. That's food and drink to somebody like Duffy. You look at Beaton as well. Beaton can read the game. Now, both of them have got issues as centre halves. Both of them have got faults as centre halves. The lack of pace with both of them is one. The lack of concentration with Beaton, I think, or his lackadaisical style is another thing. And Duffy takes him a wee while to turn. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because we've all seen it now. With Duffy, on what, you have to maybe give him a bit of slack, because he had hardly played football for 8 months, and now he's went into a cycle of playing 3 games in 8 days, including internationals, since he's came back. So mentally and physically, he's trying to adjust to that. He's also trying to mentally and physically, more mentally adjust to playing for Celtic.
Because it means so much to him on a personal level. Yes.
His body, mentally and physically, must be all over the shop because of the number of games that he's played and the mental pressure that he'll be putting himself under. I don't know, one of the viewers will probably actually say this, but I don't think the Republic of Ireland have got any internationals in this international break.
That would be a relief.
So if that's the case, that's a relief for us. Duffy can have a couple of days rest, relaxation, and get his mental focus. What's that? What you doing? And as I says earlier in the conversation as well, you could hear him. You could actually hear him shouting. Yeah. And he was constantly talking and constantly being there, putting himself on the line. And I think that's what maybe we wanted from him. And our expectations of Shane Duffy were extremely high because of the protracted transfer. We thought that we were going to get Maldini, the Hulk, and Bobo Baldi all merged into one. And what did we get? We got a rusty centre half.
Isn't that what we got in Luxo?
Aye. Some of them work, some of them didn't. Some of them are just completely different types of players. Completely different mentalities, completely different body shape, completely different fitness levels. I mean, Laxalt I didn't think Laxalt had a as involved game last Sunday at Pittodrie. I thought you saw him looking a bit leggy. I thought maybe the adrenaline had wore off him, and now he was final third game in 8 days since I've signed. I can't speak a word of English here. I'm up at Aberdeen. Where's this wind coming from? I'm frozen. What's going on here? But then when you saw him against Lille, that was a phenomenal performance against Lille. Then you saw him yesterday as well. Again, I thought he was quieter yesterday, but I would maybe expect that. I would have expected that because there is going to be a drop because he's not used to playing this cycle of games that we're in. And you're talking about the European ties as well. We need the European ties to keep momentum because we're playing one European tie a week. If we get 3 hefty defeats in the European ties, then that does nothing for the momentum.
No.
You can't just write them off. So you've got to look for the positives in every single one because of the way that the European calendar's been squashed. So the game against the Prague on Thursday night is an important game. We need a good performance, a good result to take into going to Fir Park on the Sunday.
Yeah.
So we just can't write off the European games. Aye, we can maybe not be 100% disappointed if we don't qualify from the group, but we need performances. We need players to turn up and show, and we need to carry on what we've seen in the last 2 games. We just can't write it off. You're
right, because it's all about momentum, Kevin. Now, we've spoken a lot about Tommy Rogic, and when we're looking at his performance, I mean, the two goals. So the movement of Ryan Christie, if you look at the movement, it actually runs round the back of Tommy. It's just brilliant. And Rogic knows, instinctively where Christie wants the ball. The finish was sublime. I mean, we've seen a brilliant finish by El Yunusi the other night, and that was another fantastic finish by Christie. And then the second goal, that dink, the chip, the cross by Rogic, again, you're just glad it landed to him because it was inch perfect. And I know El Yunusi had a decision to make because it was the upright and colliding with that, which he did, and fair play to him. And I'm glad he got a goal. I really am glad he got a goal because, again, he looked a bit short in confidence, actually, and then, he's performed well against Lille, very well indeed, and then he's got his goal against Aberdeen. It then begs the question when we're going into the game on Thursday, as we'll be talking about that in a few moments, Kevin, how we line up against Prague, as you mentioned that game on Thursday night. The games are coming thick and fast. You've got Griffiths who comes into the game. You've got Ajeti who comes into the game. Now, Ajeti, there was an incident, you mentioned an incident with Duffy, which left you quite bemused about the refereeing decision. I think there was another one with Ajeti where he was basically hooked and, nothing was doing. Is because of the fine margins, we're currently sitting, as we keep getting reminded, we're currently sitting 9 points behind Rangers in the league. 2 games in hand and plenty of games to play, I hope, because no one knows about what's going to happen in terms of the lockdown, Kevin. It's a big fear for everybody. Now, you're looking at the margins. I've already said I want to win the quadruple treble. I just think it's one of these things that will never happen again, not even in my, beyond my lifetime. I just don't think it'll ever happen again. That level of dominance will never be seen again. Now, the 10 in a row, I don't mind if we win it by a goal. I really don't mind if we win. But the margins are going to be that thin, potentially, Kevin, potentially. And we know that they've not been hit with injuries or illness and other factors. Obviously, the breaking news that I spoke about earlier is beginning maybe to bring home to them that it's not all going to be sweetness and light. You're not always going to have access to the majority of your best players every week. So it could come down to really, really fine margins. Does that concern you when you see some of the incompetence that we've seen served up by the officials so far?
It does worry me because officials can have an effect on the game. We've seen quite a few refereeing performances where they just seem to want to break up the rhythm of the game. And let's go back to Willie Collum. I mean, I think Willie Collins gave 4 penalty kicks in the last 2 games that he's officiated. Celtic, Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, and he missed 2 penalty kicks. And there is a problem. I'd never heard of that referee yesterday. I'd never heard of him. What was his name? Robertson? Was it Guy Robertson? I'd never heard of him, and there is a problem with the standard of refereeing in Scottish football. And the standard of refereeing is absolutely shocking in Scottish football. And when you miss things like your centre forward getting right hooked, when you give free kicks for an Aberdeen player booting the centre half then falling down, it just makes you wonder sometimes what they actually see. Where does it go? I'm very, very loath to say that there's any sort of unconscious bias in play here. I just think it's unconscious incompetence by the officials and the people who appoint these officials. I mean, how many, when you've got the referee and you had four lines people yesterday, because there was the 2 behind the goals as well, and none of them saw a punch.
No.
None of them saw it. And, I mean,
so do you not? I mean, I take on board what you say about incompetence, because we had a whole podcast about that earlier on this season, unconscious bias or incompetence. Do you accept that there will be unconscious bias? I mean, you're looking at a country where the vast majority of football people are either involved with Celtic or Rangers, and they will be brought up within that household, Kevin, of being a Celtic or a Rangers fan. So I do think there is unconscious bias, and I do think it exists within Scottish refereeing.
I think unconscious bias exists in every refereeing in every country in the world, and it usually favours big clubs. And I do wonder if that will change because there's no crowds. But I do accept the point that there will be unconscious bias by the referees.
As well as incompetence.
As well as when you mix the two of them together, it's like a hellish cocktail that you wouldn't want to drink. No,
absolutely. But it does concern me, Kevin, because I think it could get, the margins could be so fine. I keep getting reminded, but you seen what happened last season, your Rangers season fell off the edge of a cliff. That doesn't mean to say it's going to happen again. I do believe that Celtic have turned a corner, and I do believe that we're going to go on a run. But your challengers, just because it happened last season to them, doesn't mean it's going to happen again. We could be in a situation. Let's say the league is called early after 20 odd games, and the margins could be so fine. We could be talking a goal, we could be talking a draw, a point. It could be anything, and this is where my concern comes in, and that's where the officiating needs to be, absolutely spotless. As spotless as officiating can be.
Officiating in Scotland has never been spotless. Never will be. Never has been and never will be. We just have to make sure that it doesn't affect us. We need to make sure that it doesn't affect us. But then, you look at Frimpong. How many times does he get fouled?
Edouard against Dundee United.
How many times do teams try to kick our decent players off the park? And they get away with it until the Dundee United game's a perfect example. When did Andrew Dallas start booting guys? The last 10 minutes.
87 minutes.
The Dundee United big centre half should have been sent off.
Yep, twice.
In the first
St
half.
Johnson.
St Johnson as well.
Davidson.
Aye. 2
sending off offences before he got a booking.
Mind you, any time I watch Murray Davis, I always think he should get sent off anyway.
He's a clubber.
He is.
He's a hammer thrower.
I've never seen any games, and not just games against us, I've watched them in other games as well. And you go, how do you stay on a park for 90 minutes?
Now, Kevin, we've spoken for about 45 minutes and we haven't even introduced any of those watching on the social media channels, so we will be going over to you guys very, very shortly. Before we do so, a couple of more things I want to bring up. First of all, the Celtic women's team, 10-0 against Hearts, leading the way. Now, women's football, Kevin, it's one of the things, I mean, a 10-0 victory against Hearts, it was nothing each after 24 minutes. And would it not be great if we were able to go to those games as part of your season ticket when we're able to go back to watch football? Would it not be great to get involved and actually enjoy that side of Celtic as well?
Of course it would. It would be great, and is that maybe part of their plan when them doing up Barrafield?
I hope so.
When them building a wee training stadium at Barrafield, I think that could be part of promoting the women's game within the wider Celtic support.
Yeah, I think it's a great, for me, the way that is progressing and developing and growing is brilliant, and we should embrace it. So as part of your season ticket, it would be great to go and watch those games. I also think it would be great as part of something I spoke to you beforehand. We've all bought the season tickets this season, Kevin, and it's a monumental season. Next season we're still in the dark as to what's going to be happening in terms of lockdowns, the pandemic, a vaccine for this virus. But next season, I would guess that it's going to be far more difficult for a club like Celtic to expect 54,000 season ticket holders to renew their season tickets. Now, there'll be people out there screaming that, they'll do it blindly forevermore, and great, and I totally respect everybody, but not everybody's going to be in that position, Kevin. So what we were talking about before we came on was, and I hate the cliche of thinking out the box, but a different way of approaching a package for Celtic supporters, so that we're not just focusing on the 54,000, if you like, and trying to extract 500-600 quid from each of those people, but throwing it out worldwide and creating a package which is more based on content, live content. You would bring in the women's football into that as well, but something that you're paying for that's not going to cost you £500 or £600, but you're going to expand it worldwide and sell it to a much wider audience. And so you might be asking for 100 quid and looking for an audience maybe that's 10 times more than your season ticket base globally. But it would all come down to media and how smart you are with the media and the content creation, wouldn't it? So you'd be buying a pass, or you'd be an investor. And I know we've had things in the past. Was it the Worldwide Huddle, the Huddle Club, all these different things that have happened in the past, Kevin? And I think they did try to create a register, didn't they, of Celtic supporters around the world at one time. And I know that the mailing list that the club has is 2.5 million strong globally. So it's really looking beyond this season, and what do we do? Is there a package that's going to be in place where you say, well, I know I can't go to the games, but maybe I can be an investor, not just a season ticket holder, and get the same package as somebody in Australia or New Zealand or Canada, and you would also maybe get discounts and various other opportunities as part of that. Do you think clubs like Celtic are looking at opportunities if we go into another season with no crowds in stadiums?
Celtic see themselves as a worldwide club, a worldwide brand, and it would be remiss of them not to think like that, not to have a look at what Man United have got, what Liverpool have got. You've got the Irish diaspora who do give us a worldwide support, and the Scottish diaspora which do give us a worldwide support. Funnily enough, on Saturday night, I started watching the Leeds United documentary, Bring Us Back Home, and it's narrated by Russell Crowe.
Is that right?
Now, Russell Crowe is a Leeds United fan, and
Romper Stomper.
I was thinking Gladiator. When I think of Russell
Tony
Crowe,
Curran was in Gladiator.
Was he?
I'm sure he was. Big Celtic fan, so a big shout out to Tony. I'm sure he was.
Anyway, I watched 5 minutes of it, mainly because I was falling asleep, but then I got annoyed with Russell Crowe saying Leeds United, to get Leeds United back into the Premier League would awake their worldwide support. And I was like, that's a myth. I've never been anywhere in the world and I've found a Leeds United supporters club.
No.
And some Leeds United fans might want to come on and sling me, but this seems to be with clubs that we've got a worldwide fan base when they haven't really. It seems to be a thing where if you're an English Premier League club,
you get it by proxy.
We've got a worldwide fan base.
Yeah.
Right, I'm sure there's folk who are really interested in Marco Beasley and will probably have a Leeds United top and watch their games now because Beasley's there. As soon as Beasley disappears, they disappear. They haven't got a worldwide fan base. They've got eyes that will watch them for a period. Celtic have got a worldwide fan base. That's without argument. And it's something that the club maybe haven't done very, very well. They seem very focused on Glasgow and the surrounding areas.
The season tickets.
The season tickets in the Glasgow area.
And obviously the massive amounts of Irish coming over.
Yes.
Every week for the games as well.
Now, but we have got, the wee rumour is that when the fans are allowed back in the stadium, if it's this year, it's only going to be G postcodes, unless your hospitality.
That'll be out of the football authorities' hands, won't it?
Maybe it will, I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless it's hospitality. What does that say to guys like me and you, Paul? I've spent £600 on a season ticket.
We were called a pair of tutors the other week.
That's fine. I'm happy with that. I can sleep well with that.
I thought that was further up north. No?
I've been called worse. I've been called a fifer. So
I'm not biting.
No. So guys like me, my other 50 odd guys and women that go up on my Celtic supporters bus, we're possibly looking at a season getting shut out this season.
Yeah.
And I've spent £600 on 2 season tickets for me and my daughter. And for the first time ever, my wife Denise went like that to me. I'm really annoyed that Celtic are not even contacting you to say what's happening. To say their blanket line seems to be, we thought you'd be back in the stadium, Bina. No, well, that's not good enough. You gave us a refund last year. We're now a quarter of the way through the season. And they haven't gave us a peep about how they're going to make this season ticket worth the £600 value. I have got a link to watch the games. That's fantastic. I'm not going to knock that back. But my financial situation could change.
Many people's financial situations are changing.
I reckon there's a lot of households have bought a season ticket this year because it's the 10. When it comes to next year, and if Celtic do not do anything to make it worth their while this season, do not give them a refund or whatever they're planning on doing, then the season tickets will drop off a cliff. Because you'll have households go, I spent £500 last year and got to 2 games.
The decision is taken out your hands.
It's the decision out their hands.
Of course it is.
It's not worth the money because you've basically just a donation of £600. I mean, Jim Orr says it on Friday as well. He says, you're not going to pay £600 next year to watch the game on the telly, are you? So
Celtic as a club will be forced to look at a package that doesn't involve a season ticket. And in doing that, they may then harness a much wider audience around the globe, Kevin. Everybody around the world who wants to see Celtic thrive and get through this in a strong position might be offered something that doesn't cost as much as a season ticket. And because you're widening the net, then the cost per person or per head or per unit, as business people call it, would come down. So you could actually end up making more money that way. But that package would need to be value for money. We know that people, let's, for example, look at alternative media sources who charge a Patreon fee, monthly subscription. So over a year, what are you paying? 100 quid, 150 quid? I don't know. I don't subscribe, but something like that, right? Would you pay that direct to the club if you were getting brilliant, daily, regular content? 100%. Of course I would. Access to the club, access to the archives, access to all these things on a daily basis, where there's an app that takes you to breaking news, all that kind of stuff, a package that if we can't get to the games, you're going to get every game live, all these different things. A big criticism, obviously, of the English games getting sold on a PPV basis. We've seen a wee bit of that this season. St Mirren TV, Ross County TV. On top of that, you've got Sky Sports, BT Sports, Premier Sports, and then the Celtic virtual season ticket. So something that, per person, Kevin, would cost you a lot less, but you're going to sell far more of these packages. What would you call that? Are you an investor? I mean, I don't know. Are you a backer? Because the reason it started my mind thinking in those lines is a great email I got last week. I showed you it, didn't I?
That was fantastic.
From Western Australia, where they were looking at a club over there who were looking, to increase the membership to 75,000. But actually, they increased the membership to 100,000. So if you can imagine straight away, if you get 100,000 people worldwide to sign up to a membership of Celtic, whatever that membership may entail, you pay half of what the season ticket would normally cost you. If you get 200,000 to pay, and it goes on a ratchet, so you could end up paying 100 quid a year. if you were able to harness the global fan base in that way, and you're giving them live games, obviously.
I think it would work, but then you've got the broadcast deals and the legal matters with what you can show and what you can't show at certain times and out with certain times. If that got completely ripped up, which I think the English Premier League are looking to do with these pay-per-view games. What's different for England and Scotland is money. Now, there wasn't any fallout with Ross County or St Mirren charging us to watch the game, because we know that these wee clubs need the money. And I didn't mean that to sound condescending.
And in fact, you applauded them for having the foresight to set it up.
I didn't mean to sound condescending to Ross County and St Mirren there. The problem that you've got down in England, there was £1 billion worth of transfer fees. Then 2 days later, the clubs come out and go, by the way, we're struggling here, you need to start paying for your games.
Oh. And
you go, well, no, that's where that problem. And to actually price it £5 less than a pay-per-view boxing. Now, Jay McKenna, I think it was Jay McKenna, for the Spirit of Shankly, was on the Anfield Wrap, and he says that this pay-per-view is the start of the big games going behind pay-per-view. So you'll get your game last night, Tottenham against Brighton, you'll get your Southamptons, West Hams, you'll get the little games, but Liverpool, Man United will be £12. Man City, Manchester United, £12. Liverpool, Everton, £12.
Exploitation.
Celtic, Rangers, £12.
Yeah.
Behind a paywall. And this is the start of it trying to trickle into the consciousness that this is the way it's going to go. And if they try to do that, they'll get a shock, because the fans will already go. I think
they'll kick back against
they will kick back.
Yep.
And I think the numbers of the PPVs that they've actually had down in England is far lower than what they actually expected. You look at the Liverpool game last Saturday night. Liverpool game box office last Saturday night against West Ham. Was it West Ham? I think it was. Or Sheffield United, one of them. Liverpool fans gave £93,000 to a local food bank instead of paying Sky $14.95.
Yep.
So the fans do not want the pay-per-view. We pay for our Sky, we pay for our subscriptions. And for us to actually pay for another subscription, it would have to give us something fantastic. Maybe this is where the SPFL TV would come in, or something like that. But I'm really worried about what Celtic will do in the next close season when all of this plays out. Now, I'm sitting here going, I want a refund, and I know it will hurt my club. I know it will mean that somebody will get sold and they won't have money for players because that budget's then took away. But sometimes your club's just got to do the right thing. Do the right thing by you, right thing by the supporters. And I know some people sit there going, I never took my refund. I took my refund. I could not knock back my refund at the end of the season.
That's a personal, individual choice, Kevin. You know, you don't have to justify it or otherwise.
No, I'm not justifying it. I'm saying I took it.
Aye.
And what I'm actually saying is Celtic need to come out now, like Motherwell and other clubs have come out and go, if you didn't get back into a game, this is what's going to happen, and allow you to make the choice at this precise moment in time.
These are discussions, Kevin, that as long as it's out in the open, I don't think any football fan has an issue with it, as long as there's an engagement with the club. You know, if that engagement continues, then everybody knows where to stand.
Aye.
You know?
They have to do right by the supporters, who some of them would have put themselves massively into debt to support the club this season.
They do. A lot of people I know do that anyway, you know, to make sure they go to every game. But this season of all seasons, under the circumstances, absolutely spot on. Now, tomorrow, Kevin, we had a wee chat over the weekend, and tomorrow's a big day. It's a big day for someone who sometimes flies under the radar, and he never should. A guy who didn't want to write a book about his career for many, many years, until he was convinced to do it fairly recently. And it's Charlie Gallagher. Now, Charlie is 80 years of age tomorrow. And Charlie Gallagher is rightly referred to as a Lisbon Lion, having played in some of the rounds leading to the final. Never played in the final, but you look at two pivotal moments. And Charlie says to me himself that for many years he didn't like the fact that his career was almost based on two pivotal moments. But the corner kick that resulted in Billy McNeill scoring the headed goal to win Celtic the Scottish Cup in 1965 against Dunfermline in a 3-2 victory. And from the same corner of the field, if you like, for Celtic against Vojvodina in the European run. And what was, according to many of the Lisbon Lions, the toughest game they played all season against Vojvodina. And what I loved, actually, somebody mentioned during the week there about, one of the ball boys. And it's happened a couple of times, ball boys celebrating and he gets captured on an image and he goes on to play for Celtic. But I think Aidan McGeady, David Marshall, Callum McGregor, they've all been mentioned. But the one that I always go back to is the wee guy that runs up and kicks the ball out of the net after Billy McNeill scores the winning goal in 1965 is none other than Andy Lynch. And 12 years later, Andy Lynch scores a penalty kick into the same goal to win the Scottish Cup for Celtic against Rangers. And I love how football works like that. It's incredible. But we thought, Charlie, lovely gentleman, Celtic icon, really. It's turning 80 tomorrow. So tell our viewers what it is you've done that we'll be able to share with them tomorrow.
I've wrote a piece to celebrate the moment that probably kick-started the revolution. So it's called The Kick That Started the Revolution, and it celebrates that corner kick against Dunfermline in 1965. It's now, when we discussed it over the weekend, I went back and had a look at the fantastic Celtic Wiki archive and the Glasgow Herald archive, and there's a picture on the Celtic Wiki, if you go and have a look at it, and it's taken from the main stand, and you can see Charlie taking the corner kick, and you've got the big north enclosure with that perched stand on top of it, the perched enclosure, and you can see Billy rising, just putting the ball into the back of the net. And there was also some footage from the Scottish Pathé News, Scottish Movie Tone Company, and it was panning round the crowd. So basically I wrote a piece based on a boy that I spied in the crowd, who was wearing his best clothes because it was a cup final day. And I've written it from his point of view of what happened that day and what happens next in the future.
So that guy, whoever he might be, will probably be in his mid-60s now?
Yes, probably.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder who it is. We will be airing that tomorrow, Kevin. We're going to film it just after this bulletin. We're an hour in. Let's have a wee look at what people are saying. And now, Stephen Forbes has just reminded me of something that completely, I don't know if this is an age thing, I completely forgot. I've got 2 tickets for Johnny Owen's documentary tonight.
I knew that.
And I won't be able to go. So if you can use them, can you use them, Kevin? No. If anybody on a Celtic State of Mind's bulletin can use them, because I'm actually working late tonight. We're doing another broadcast tonight for another podcast in the studio. Stephen Forbes, my dad, Kenny and I followed up the cup win by going to see The Three Kings last night. Johnny Owen's film perfectly captures the very essence and history of three great men, clubs and cities, highly recommended. Of course, we had Johnny Owen for his second appearance on A Celtic State of Mind just a couple of weeks back, talking about the new documentary, which focuses on the life and times of Bill Shankly, Matt Busby and Jock Stein. It's called The Three Kings. I instantly went out and bought 2 tickets once they went up for sale, and I've totally forgotten about it until Stephen's mentioned it. So if anybody out there wants them, give me a shout. I'll be able to send you the link because it's all done by email now. So get in touch.
Where is it? Livingston, eh?
It's in Livingston, It's in Livingston. Thanks for reminding me. So it's in Livingston, Kevin. 2 tickets.
What time does it
I've no idea, but I think it's 7, but I'm doing a podcast at 7 o'clock. So Stephen, thanks for reminding me. Kevin, thanks for reminding me of the details. And if anybody wants the tickets, give me a shout and I'll send them to you. And that would be excellent if you could maybe come on and let us know. Let us know how the film goes, because I think it'll be cracking. Hello, PJD, says Tyrone Gale. First post, great result yesterday. Hampden Park in the snow, 4 in a row. Here we go. There's another poet. He's looking for your job, mate. I'm looking forward to this cup final. I mean, how many have we been together? 2 together. Were we at the Motherwell? We were at the Motherwell game together. So it's one of these things that you wanted to, look at each of them and say, well, that's where I was, that's who I was with, It's going to be a wee bit unusual this time round, Kevin.
Definitely. I'm going to miss the whole travelling up on the supporters bus and...
Did we not do the hospitality against, what was it?
Motherwell, we done the hospitality.
Aye, that's the only way I could get a ticket that year, I think.
We done the hospitality and the Celtic team was...
Marvin Compere was...
was
right.
there, aye.
Yep.
I was going to go up and speak to him, but I bottled it, didn't bother.
But the thing is, after that, we were pointing out where we were sitting during the Hampden season. And
aye.
we just took a moment to kind of soak it all in and remember harder times, I guess.
I think, again, that was one of the... When we had the conversation, when we're standing there in the posh seats and... having a look over, you pointed to the corner flag down at what's the West Terrace, and I was down there. I says, well, I was away up, 3 lows for the back, and the East Terrace, and if somebody would have said to you in 1994 we were going to be sitting there doing a double treble at that point, after an invincible treble, if somebody had told you that you had won X amount of titles in a row at that point, that you were going to get to a European Cup final, in 1994, you would have went, go away and give some of that stuff like you're buzzing, because
it seemed so far from reality, you know,
so far fetched.
Yep.
So, and I'm sure, and I think I'll get this over in the piece that I'm going to do. I'm sure in 1965 it felt the exact same.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've spoken to people like David Potter and Tom Campbell about that.
Mm-hmm.
How far from reality a European Cup win or a 9 in a row actually seemed to Celtic fans back then. Mm-hmm. It was all doom and gloom, you know, when you think about how inconsistent they'd been in the 50s and then how poor they'd been since the League Cup win in 57 right up to 65. So we're living in very, very special times, Kevin. Very special times.
Unique times. Times that will always be remembered and never repeated. And we've got to remember that. And we mentioned the 90s often, but the Celtic support had a humour in the 90s. We had a great sense of humour, and we've still got that on occasion. And if this all goes pear-shaped this season, hopefully it won't, but if we've came out with 4 trebles in a row, we can't moan about our lot.
Well, we will be discussing every single step of the way, Kevin, and probably if someone does want the tickets for the night, I'm thinking the easiest way to do this, because literally hundreds of messages come through in these broadcasts, it might be difficult to actually go through them. Just email me, and my email address is pauljohndykes@gmail.com, and the first email that drops into that inbox gets the tickets. I think that's the fairest way, Kev.
Right.
Right, Stephen Forbes goes on to say, Tom Rogic has been watching videos of himself from 2016-17, an impressive return to form, but I think the defining moments could be Luxo's signing and the return of Griffiths, because I've suggested that this could be one of the pivotal defining moments of the season, Tommy Rogic coming back.
Great points, but I've just got the image of Tam sitting in his living room watching videos of himself. I really hope that happens. I hope he does that.
Do you?
Aye.
Do you watch yourself back on the ACSOM bulletin?
No, I don't.
Now, I don't believe you. Jim Hockey via YouTube. And by the way, over the weekend, thanks everybody for subscribing, because obviously we're trying to build the channel. It's all free, as we said before, but we smashed through the 4,000 subscribers figure. Now, that doesn't seem a lot, Kevin, but we've only really started on YouTube back in August time.
August, aye.
Giving regular content out on YouTube. So we're hoping to grow that and get bigger on YouTube as well. Now, we have got more subscribers than 4 Scottish Premierships clubs, so we are growing up and we're climbing the table. Jim says, really agree with the extra content. I always remember the Celtic TV channel back in the day was great, seeing reserve and youth games. Well, what would need to be part of what we're saying there, what did I call it, investors? Memberships. So you'd have a membership, and part of that membership, it wouldn't just be content, Kevin, but part of that membership would be a pass to the content. And I don't know if they would have different levels of content, but you could have daily. I mean, if we can do an hour or 2 every day, the club could have, I'm not going to say 24/7, but they've got a huge archive, haven't they? They've got youth games, they've got first team games, they've got women's games. There's loads and loads they could focus on. And they could create something every single day that would maybe span into the 6 to 8 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure they could.
They could, and even shown the development games live, the reserve league games live, under 18 games live as well. It doesn't take that much to set up a wee camera now. You see a lot of the lower league clubs have used, have set up live streaming events for themselves.
What did they call it? The VO cameras that they set up, and
Well,
they follow the linesman instead of the ball.
Aye, there's been some absolutely hilarious. I was talking to a Stirling Albion fan at the week on Friday there, and she says that they were watching a recent Stirling Albion game, and it followed a Chris poke.
Really?
Aye.
It was probably better, to be fair. What was it? Knick-knacks?
I don't know.
Now, Marcius Talia, I struggle with some of these names. I'm apologising in advance if I got that wrong. Sorry, Marcius. You're commenting on YouTube. The club could do themselves a favour by looking at ACSOM and see the content that's been provided. Now, thanks very much for that comment. I think this season what we looked at, Kevin, is let's get content out daily. Multiple times if possible, particularly on a match day. We're looking at other things. We're looking at some of the big platforms down south and what they're doing, Kevin, and we're not going to nick their ideas, but we're certainly looking at what other clubs, media content providers are doing, and we're looking to expand it.
We're looking out with football as well.
Absolutely.
Look to see what other media companies are, because that's what we are. We're state of mind, and we've got other arms and legs, and a Celtic state of mind's just part of that.
It was due to a Celtic state of mind that we were able to create something and build it as well, Kevin. But and a Celtic state of mind's audience is massive, is growing, and we don't do anything, despite what some people might think. We don't do anything to speculate on that in terms of sensationalism, Kevin. Make comments just for views. We're hoping that it's a gradual process of building an audience. But you look at things like, Sky Sports News. It's a bulletin and it continues and it's on a loop, and then some more news comes in and they add that in. You could actually have a 24-hour channel, Kevin.
You could.
If you had the staff, they've got the equipment certainly to do that. They've got the content to do it, the club. Would you buy that? I would. If I wasn't getting to a game and I knew I was going to get the games as well as all the behind-the-scenes stuff and the archive stuff, I would buy the pass, 100%.
Of course you would, but it would have to be decent content. It would have to be well-made content, but they've got the access that none of us can have. I mean, we're fan media. We haven't got access to the club whatsoever. So they've got all that access to player access. I'm sure there's probably legal reasons why they can't do a lot of the stuff that you want them to do. Or they'll make up legal reasons why they can't do a lot of the stuff that we want them to do, because they just haven't got the staff. I mean, we could sit here and do 3 broadcasts a day. We could do one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one at night.
And we probably will end up doing that.
If we had enough different presenters, so you'd know they know the presenting all the time as well.
I know, because you get bored of looking at me, Kev. Is that what you're getting at there, sir?
The viewer's choice, man. The viewer's choice.
Ah, dear. Right. Now, Robert Highland, PJ would turn Celtic Park into a music venue. Now, listen, that's not a bad shout, because my first gig I ever went to was at Celtic Park. I went to see U2 in 1993, and they were supported by Stereo MCs and Utah Saints. And it was a tremendous venue for live music. It really was. And I know going back, Prince played at Celtic Park, as did The Who. Who else? There were others. People will be in the know that's watching it. There were others that played there. Shakespeare's Sister, but they supported Prince, didn't they? They supported Prince. But they're the ones that I can remember. I can't remember The Who playing there, but I've seen the tickets and I've seen the posters. But I did suggest that to the foundation. I think they should have, how they have the annual game generally, and it's the Lubo's Legends and Henrik's Heroes and all that stuff, and it's a big game, and interest in that was high, but then it kind of dipped a wee bit, didn't it?
When you have too many of them.
So maybe you have one of the games a year, and then on an alternate year have a gig, and the gig could be all the Celtic minded bands. So we'll have Primal Scream maybe headlining it. You could have a compare, Frankie Boyle as a compare, and just have all the Celtic bands, Paolo Nutini, Lewis Capaldi, Glass Vegas, Jerry Cinnamon. Who else is on the bill, Kev? Primal Scream.
Simple Minds.
Simple. You could have that. Oh, brilliant. There you go. So have that for a festival, foundation festival.
Would that work? Would that get 60,000 in?
I'd go.
Women, children.
I think so,
life,
aye.
Wains. I think you would need to. It would have to be more like the Capital big time ball. Where if you put Lewis Capaldi on, you're going to get the audience.
Capaldi and Cinnamon on the same, and Paul Nutini. Come on, you'd sell it out.
Eh?
You'd sell it out. Absolutely.
No many folk would let off flares to Lewis Capaldi.
And then the final act being Primal Scream, I reckon.
The place would be empty.
We need to get Aslan in as well, wee Christie.
The place would be empty by the time the Primal Scream came on.
Would Celtic allow the Wolf Tones back in?
The Wolf Tones won't.
Well, Tom Grant's not on the board any longer, so I don't think they'd be allowed in. You see that picture? Brilliant. James Lafferty.
It's a terrible video that they made. Absolutely shocking video.
You know. But there's pictures surfaced, obviously.
Yes, Tom Grant.
James Lafferty, a Netflix deal on every game that is not on Sky would be amazing. You look at Netflix, Amazon Prime, the way that people watch TV has changed so much. Kevin, I've made a big deal of the old, Peaky Blinders, because I didn't watch telly for about 7 years, maybe longer. And I seriously didn't watch TV. And I've said this to you before, I'm not one of these guys, Kevin, that watches football every night of the week. If Celtic aren't playing, I don't watch it. Mm-hmm. And people think that's bizarre. I don't watch the English football or any other football. While I'm in here, I watch the Sky Sports News for breaking news all day. But I think people are now getting their TV fix, entertainment fix on tablets and on smart TVs, and it's all through Netflix and Prime and all these different avenues, is it not?
I do think that the English League are trying to break the monopoly that you can't show games live at 3 o'clock. I think there will be a change in European football where that happens, and it'll be what Suey sort of says, if that is Suey.
I think it is.
That's on the James Lafferty. I know.
It is, yes, it is, James.
So that will happen, and it will be UEFA backed, I reckon. Because I think this whole... When live football started in the 50s and 60s, they were going, it would stop guys going to the game. If you're going to watch Peterhead against Stirling Albion, you're going to watch Peterhead against Stirling Albion. You're not going to pay £9 to watch Real Madrid against Racing Santander. Mm-hmm. You're not going to do that. That's not going to happen anymore. If you're going to the game, you're going to go to the game. So I don't think this, as you say, times are changing. If you had every game available on pay-per-view, then I think it would be a good thing for the clubs, a money earner for the clubs, money earner for leagues as well. When we spoke about the St Pauli season ticket at £40, Celtic could have that for Australian, Canadians, Americans, anybody in the diaspora all over the world. But I do believe that this pay-per-view is the first chance of this. This is the first example of this being tried. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of talk coming in relation to refunds, but what we're trying to look at, Kevin, is next season. We're looking at next season. And what would invariably happen is, if, for example, you were able to widen that net, and it's not just a Celtic TV subscription I'm talking about here, it's creating a platform that's given access and engagement to football fans worldwide, to Celtic fans, for a fee that wouldn't be anywhere near what you would pay for a season ticket. And what you would end up having, this would be the business plan, is you would have more subscribers than obviously season ticket holders who'd be paying less, but over the piece you would be making more profit. And I just think that, after the event, once it gets back to some form of normality where 54,000 people are allowed to buy a season ticket at Celtic Park and go to the games, you would have all these people worldwide that you've reached out to and engaged with who could continue on a different level entirely.
I know. It's something that you would hope the club were looking at. Because for me, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but they never really seem proactive at stuff like this. And the amount of times that we waited on the refund and how they made it so difficult to get a refund. I mean, they've been fantastic this year. Fantastic at getting you to buy stuff. Mm-hmm. I must admit though, I did buy one of the Adidas polo shirts, and I'm a bit disappointed with the quality. With the way the badge is like just a sticky on badge, and I was very disappointed with the quality, truthfully. But they're great at us spending money. The free tops this year have been absolutely fantastic. But next year's different. Next year is completely different. Next season is completely different for a lot of people. Financially is different. Celtic need to have a look at that. They've got to have a look at, not just for worldwide, but for their British and Irish based, Scottish, Irish and English based fans as well. They've got to have a look at people who have invested money that they maybe couldn't afford this season for a product that they're not going to see. Or we've already missed a quarter of the season. They've got to look at how to give us that quarter of a season back. They've got to have a look at that. And if it hits them in the pocket, yes, that is going to make it difficult for certain budgeting reasons, but sometimes you've just got to do something because it's the right thing to do by your support.
Absolutely. Now, Kevin, we've spoken about a range of subjects today, and it was just unfortunate that we couldn't get more of the fans' perspectives in today, but what they did alert me to was some unruly fans coming in and making comments of an offensive nature, so I've had to go on a wee blocking spree there. So thank you again for bringing that to our attention. We're trying to monitor that live and also after the event as well, and eventually we will block them all. I mean, why would you come in and watch a Celtic podcast if you support Rangers? I don't understand it, Kevin. I really don't get that, but they do. So therefore the block button has been used. Now, a wee reminder for everybody, I will be premiering Kevin's brand new poem on Charlie Gallagher tomorrow to celebrate Charlie's 80th birthday. God bless him. And also, there's 2 tickets to the showing, one of the very few showings of Three Kings. It's in Livingston tonight. I'll check the time. But if you want them, email me, pauljohndykes@gmail.com. First email that drops in at my inbox, I will forward you the tickets via email, and you can go and enjoy that and let us know how you get on the podcast at some point this week. So all that's left for me to say is thank you all for getting involved, and once again, thanks for joining me, Kevin Graham, on A Celtic State of Mind.
See you later, lads.